Today we're going to continue down the path of looking at the business and what's next. The discussion will revolve around some really cool things that WaveGuide's been working on. And for those of you who don't know Scott Walker and WaveGuide, WaveGuide's an organization we partnered with almost 4 years ago now to help us on the technology front. Because as we were looking at winning business and developing new business, it was an area that we needed to strengthen in order to continue to grow. And I guess it gives me a positive stage to turn it over to Scott. So thank you, Scott.
So for those of you who don't run around thinking about WaveGuide every day, let me give you a quick reminder of what we do. So as you know, we're in technology. So we do AV, IT, and acoustics consulting and design. We do software automation and data analytics, and we do ongoing AV operations. All of them are going to be challenged. They are challenged today with how to return to work and how to return to school safely. It is mind-numbingly complex, and I've sat in all the return to work reboot series, and even though they've had nothing to do with what I do, it's made me appreciate how complicated it is. And certainly on the technology front, it's also pretty complicated. So we want to help your clients with these challenges. So what are we doing here at WaveGuide? Well, like everyone else in the first couple of weeks, we were all just trying to figure out what this was. But about 8 weeks ago, we started to think about all these services we've been doing for 24 years, from workplace technology assessment, master planning, standards development, project management, data analytics, operations, and basically aligning all those services in this moment of need to help clients return to work. And we think this is the important pivot, because this is the current challenge, is how do we take all of this know-how we all have that you guys have in food or concierge or conference center management and that we have in technology, and align it to what the client needs today. So let's talk about, why is this so hard? Well, let's think about it from the CEO's point of view. She can see her shining headquarters or school off in the distance. She sees there's this road that gets her back to work and her people back to work, but there's this giant boulder in the way. And she says, I need to stay viable. Our organization just can't roll up and die and go out of business. So how do I bring my people back safely? And most people are taking this kind of graduated step. X% back on date A and Y% on date B and Z% on date C. Whew. Okay, that was hard. We had to figure out who's essential, who can come back next, who can come back next. Great. Boulder moved. Well, wait a minute, what are these other boulders? No one told me about these. Right. Oh, sure. What are we doing about temperature monitoring? Oh, right. What about PPE? We never had to think about these things. And social distancing. We didn't even know what that was 3 months ago. Oh, and food. How are we going to feed people? Oh, and cleaning. Cleaning's now like job one. And lions and tigers and bears. Oh my, how am I getting to the Emerald City? And I'm making a little bit light, but it's really challenging. So let's just talk through a couple of scenarios that we're seeing play out. So on the workplace continuum, from we're rocking and rolling, everybody's back in June, to we didn't make it, we're bankrupt. There's a number of waypoints that most corporations are falling into, from essential workers this summer, we'll see you after Labor Day, we'll see you in 2021, we'll see you maybe never, or do we even need offices anymore? So one by one, corporations are starting to fill in the blanks. The tech companies went first. They were probably the easiest and fastest to virtualize and evangelize that. So you heard Twitter come out, early on saying, hey, we'll see you maybe never. But many of them were saying, maybe Labor Day. I've had this slide now for 5 or 6 weeks, and every week I update it, I shift everyone to the right, because people think, oh, we'll all be back at Labor Day, and then it turns out that only 10% will be back, and now they're pushing into next year or Q2 of next year. And of course, there are thousands of corporations that haven't even really figured this out yet, or at least not publicly. And a lot of the reason they haven't really come out is they're trying to figure out what's going on with the school thing. And honestly, I think the college university thing is one of the hardest, most vexing challenges on planet Earth, because people live at colleges. They can't just go for a few hours and go home if they get sick. They're there. And, early on, a couple of colleges said it's business as usual, but a couple said, like the California state system and Harvard Med School, at least for freshmen, I know that's a FLIC client, said, we'll see you in 2021. In the past few weeks, Notre Dame and the University of South Carolina kind of came up with a novel approach of, we'll see you sooner. We're not going to take a fall break. We're going to send you home at Thanksgiving and then don't come back until January. And then, there's thousands of schools, colleges, universities, community colleges, private schools, public school systems that I'm amazed haven't really weighed in yet. And I think it's because it's incredibly challenging. How do you social distance in an environment that wasn't built for that? Well, I think my prediction is what's going to happen is this very messy middle hybrid situation where it's both and. We're virtual and we're back in business. And I think 80+% of institutions are going to fall into this for a year, 2 years, maybe longer. And that's going to be tricky because it's hard enough to do the entirely virtual thing. It's really hard to do the hybrid, always live and always virtual thing. And I'll unpack that a bit more. So in thinking about this as a technologist, to me, it's not really about PPE. It's about PPT. It's about people, process, and technology. That's what the CEO or the university president needs to get back to business. So let's talk about that a little bit. It's my opinion, but I just, in talking to some heads of corporate real estate and talking to people, executives in various businesses, I don't believe most office workers are going to come back into the office if they have to wear PPE all day long. Now, some workers are having to do that, and God bless them. I think people in labs and plants who are used to wearing protective equipment will do it. Certainly frontline workers have been doing it, but I think the corporate worker is probably just going to stay at home if they have to wear a mask or gloves or, don PPE all day. And again, I've vetted that assumption with a couple of heads of corporate real estate, and then they align with that. That's what their people are telling them. So social distancing will be the sort of reasonable compromise, the accepted compromise. But if you think about social distancing, if you move away the first boulder and you stare at this next one, it doesn't really work without some way to measure and monitor it. We're not going to whack people with rulers if they get too close together. We need to have a more mature technological way of doing this. First and foremost, companies are going to want to ensure their workers are safe. That's obviously job one. No one wants to bring people back and have them get sick. However, unless there's some immunity law that gets passed, which is highly unlikely, they're also going to be mindful of legal exposure. And so they're going to want to prove, both for safety and to cover themselves, that their workplaces are safe, being regularly cleaned, and proactively managed. Well, this is going to take technology, scheduling software, sensors, signage, mobile apps, and a whole lot of people and process behind the scenes. Okay, so what I want to do for a minute is just walk through a day in the life, an idealized day in the life of a return to work worker. So I'm going to kind of use workplace, but you can think about this as conference center or school, whatever your vertical is. So this worker, we're going to call her Jill. She might bear some faint resemblance to a certain host of this meeting. When Jill wakes up, ideally, there should be a mobile app that she consults to find out what's happening today. Are there any news alerts about outbreaks at her place of work? What about some clients have shuttle bus, service? Where does she park? Which shuttle bus is she taking? That app should deal with booking space. It should deal with food. It should deal with controlling the technology she encounters through her workday. So let's talk about that a little bit. Well, first of all, at the beginning of the workday, she's going to have to get her temperature scanned. And we're not going to go from the short commute of the bedroom to the spare bedroom that we're currently all doing and then stand in line for an hour to get your temperature scanned. It's got to be done in mere seconds. So if somebody's going to hop on public transit or get in traffic to come into the office, we need to not make this another bottleneck where they have to stand next to each other to get temperature scans. And there's new technology. I was just on a webinar earlier today from Samsung, and they were talking about some of their scanning technology. They were also talking about their virtual concierge technology, and maybe it's time to look at that again. When these first came out, they were kind of laughed at, and Rapport does a great job with physical concierge, and you can't replace that. But why are we exposing these people to everybody who walks through the front door? Maybe there's a way to technologically overcome this and cover more lobbies with one person if the client's trying to save money. Also, when Jill walks into the building, she's going to need to know where she can work that day. And digital signage could be part of that to say, this floor is green, it's clean, this one's being cleaned, it'll come online soon, this other one don't use because we haven't cleaned it yet. So when Jill gets to work, she's got to find a place to work. And as we all know, corporate America has gone crazy in the last 12 or so years with open plan. Well, we need to know that the place she's working is cleaned and that it's schedulable. So we need to not only book meeting space, we need to book workspace. So if a client's using EMS or Condeco or Team or any of these softwares, we need to look at aligning this with janitorial, with social distancing, and with, you know, which parts of the building are allowed to be booked. And the software needs to be sophisticated so you can go from traditional to social distance and back with the flip of a switch. So if a campus, you know, goes traditional and then there's an outbreak and they need to go back to social distancing, they can do that by flipping a switch. Similarly, one head of corporate real estate said, well, people are really going to come back because they're going to want to collaborate. They're going to want to work face to face. Well, every meeting room on campus, the capacity probably got cut in half or less. So if Jill needs an 8-person, if she has a 4-person meeting, she needs an 8-person or 10-person room. So again, the scheduling software needs to respond to that. Now, once Jill's in the meeting, let's talk about what the experience should be. Simply by her walking through the door, that should authenticate and check her into the meeting. And we have this at McDonald's. Now, they did it through a mobile app. There are other ways to do it. The system can turn on by mere motion presence. She should have the ability to launch that meeting, start that call, share her content, hang up that call, do everything from her mobile device instead of touching a touch screen or, you know, a scheduling panel or walking up to some big screen at the front of the room and grabbing an HDMI cable or a USB cable. So that takes some tech to make that automated. And then when the meeting is done, ideally those meeting participants just walk away. And when the meeting occupancy, the room occupancy sensor goes low, it should send something to janitorial saying, okay, this room has been unoccupied for 5 minutes. We're going to assume the meeting's over. Let's send a flag to go clean that room. Once that janitor has cleaned that room, the mere act of the cart, cleaning cart leaving that room should now put that room back in the schedule to be available again. And again, this is sort of an idealized situation, but if we don't do it this way, how are we going to know that room's been cleaned and ready for the next group? And one corporate real estate person said, we're just going to have to rely on people cleaning their own room. I'm squinting to try to figure out if that's going to be a reality. They have a hard time cleaning up after their, you know, coffee and bagels. I'd be surprised if they're going to don gloves and start wiping down Herman Miller chairs at the end of every meeting for the next meeting group, but maybe. Obviously, you guys all know about Thrive, the wonderful app that CDL has created. So food ordering, you know, you guys know all about it. It's going to now be on your personal device, no more kiosks, no more self-serve. And again, the other return to work reboots have talked about that. The digital signage is going to also be key for wayfinding because I think a lot of meetings are going to be rescheduled at the last minute if a space hasn't been properly cleaned. So we need to integrate all these technologies into digital signage so people know where to go. And when they meet, particularly for large meetings, it's going to be that thing we do that's the most complicated, which is it's live, it's virtual, it's local, it's remote, it's streamed, it's archived. And we're now even looking at augmented reality and virtual reality. So, you know, taking this beyond just AV, but into another realm. And we can help you guys with that too, if that's something your client's interested in. Okay, so what does this take behind the scenes? First, highly integrated janitorial tech. And that's not a phrase I'd ever said before a few weeks ago, but I think getting janitorial brought into the light of day, they're not going to be cleaning at night, they're cleaning all day, they're going to be front and center. That needs to be coordinated with scheduling. Digital signage content now needs to inform guests and clients about the health and wellness or safety of the facility. Mobile apps need to be developed, and this has been talked about for years and years, and few corporations have pulled the trigger. Those that have are very happy right now. So if your client's been thinking about this, this may be the time to actually push that over the goalpost. Enterprise standards means that you have fewer versions of that app you need to create. If every campus had the same technology in it, then it's very easy to have one app for the entire enterprise. People counting sensors, I think, are the one that the bolder people haven't thought about yet. But let's say the CEO says, okay, we're going to let 60% of the people back into the office. That should be good. We should be distant. Well, how do you know they don't all eat lunch at the same time or go to the conference center at the same time, or that they're not violating social distancing some other way? Well, we can do this through people counting sensors. So when Jill gets off the elevator, it can say the 4th floor is at 90% capacity. Maybe consider moving your workspace or meeting up to the 5th floor. It's only at 40% capacity. You know, that'd be nice to know throughout the workday. Wireless, touchless, and even voice-controlled technology, Alexa for business. People are using it in their homes. Maybe it's time to actually look at it for the office. And again, as I said, the ability to flip between traditional and social distance mode. I know people like Lucy Stahl, who's been working with Merck, has gone in and changed all the meeting room capacities. Well, we need to do that where it can flip back and forth overnight if it needs to. And of course, it's going to take a staff of people. This isn't going to manage itself. So just kind of some what's in, what's out comparisons. What's in? Mobile apps to control your workplace. What's out? Kiosks, touch anything. That used to be the cool thing was, ooh, there's a touch screen, and now that's passé. Up to the minute digital signage versus signage that's showing old content. This needs to be current. Janitorial tech is in. Police tape and orange cones are probably out. One collaboration platform that teams can work on no matter where they are. This has always been a good idea, but it's now more important than ever because every meeting is going to be virtualized. People counting systems, I think, are going to see new resonance in the minds of corporate real estate versus these cheap occupancy sensors that really are only good at turning off lights, if that. Obviously, on the policy side, flexible work from home policies are going to become the norm versus a one-size-fits-all. A dedicated staff to do this, particularly technical staff, versus everybody for themselves, and clearly written processes versus we're making it up as we go along. So you might say, okay, well, that sounds like a lot of work, Scott. I just don't see that investment, paying off in time, because we'll be back to the old normal once we do all this. Well, let's talk about that. First of all, no one knows how long we're in this current normal or what the sort of next normal will be. Will the virus mutate? Will there be other pathogens? This might be part of our fabric for a while. Secondly, we have mobile apps to do everything in our lives except control our workplace. That's like the one giant thing that hasn't happened. This innovation's long overdue. If we can do it in our house, we can do it in our workplace. Additionally, having workplace analytics is always a good idea for corporate real estate. They can make better decisions, regardless of social distancing, to know where people are in their building from a security standpoint, from a usability, and are we getting the best bang for our corporate real estate buck. Analytics always helps. And lastly, having smarter scheduling software that integrates with janitorial and food, that's a good idea in normal times. It's a good idea anytime. So thus, none of this investment would be wasted. This would be fine even if we get a vaccine early and we're back to the old normal. Okay, so lastly, you're saying, okay, I'm kind of in, but where do we go from here? How do I get started? At least I hope you're saying that. So what's step one? Step one is WeWaveGuide will send you a one-pager, two-pager that we're working on right now about how to put the puzzle pieces together for your clients. We'll send you some email text so you can basically do a Dear Bob. We talked about this. Here's a little one-pager, two-pager for you to look at what Compass can do for you. Step two is, if your client's interested, through Julie Naddis, send her an email and say, hey, I've got fish on the line. I want to get Scott or one of the other principals to engage, and let's have an internal conversation so we can understand kind of the state of play, the state of the contract, what services Compass is offering, and kind of have that behind the scenes huddle. And then let's get on the phone with the client. Let's talk about their pain points. Let's talk about what initiatives they have going on and help identify gaps. And then the fun begins. I wish I could say that there was a magic pill, or just go to Amazon and download this thing or order this magic box and they'll be fine. Unfortunately, it's not so simple. It's going to take expert consulting. It's going to take strong project management, and a lot of folks to get this done. And we're ready to do that. We're excited to do it. But it's going to be a consultative process because each client is different. Some may have a lot of this in place. It just needs to be aligned. Some may be starting from square zero. So we're ready to engage.